I'm certain you've heard the phrase, you can probably finish it. If you want something done right, do it what? Do it yourself. This is something I hear business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are trying to do stuff in their life say all the time. And it is a little bit more of a mantra. It's actually for a lot of people, and it has been for myself, an identity. And it's really hard when you have a certain mindset or a certain story about something like that to break out of that identity and see the real possibility. What I have realized about doing things yourself all the time is that's also another way, if you want something to take as much of the only non-renewable resource as it can possibly take from your life, do it yourself. The only non-renewable resource that you can't get more of exponentially in some sort of way is your time. And so if you want to make sure that that thing takes as much of your time as it can possibly take, do it yourself. Now, I know a lot of people are going to react and say, hey, you know what would take even more time than doing it myself? Assigning it to someone else, delegating it to somebody else, and then having them do it wrong, and then having to do it myself anyway. I know that's an experience that a lot of people have had. But I really think that you should give delegating a chance and become good at it over time. We are going to talk about a few things within delegating that I think will make it more possible. But the reality is that delegating takes time to learn. If you think about the actual skill that you're trying to delegate or that you are trying to get someone else to do, it took time to learn that skill. How long did it take you to program? How long did it take you to learn to, write code or organize your business a certain way or put up listings online or whatever it is? Maybe it took you, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, and then people try delegating or try, passing it off to someone else 1 or 2 times and they say, oh, this doesn't work. Well, yeah, if you try it 1 or 2 times, assume that it is going to take you a while to learn how to delegate. It doesn't have to take 5 or 8 years, but you should give it the same amount of time that you would give any other skill. So take the time to learn. And here's 4 ways that I have found to delegate more effectively. So first off, break it down. I discovered, so when I first started getting into business, I was looking at hiring people. It was just me. And my business coach said, what you will find is to replace what you do, you're not just going to hire one person. You think, oh, I can just hire one person and they'll replace me. The reality is, she said, you're going to have to hire 7 people. And I was like, that's crazy. There's no way. Turns out, yes, because I was so used to doing all sorts of things, wearing so many hats, kind of muscling through, learning different things, all that sort of stuff. I had become good at doing so many different things, such a variety of different things, and I kind of got in the flow of it. And so when I really took the time to break down what it took to accomplish any of those things, I realized that it was actually made up of a whole bunch of subunits. So for instance, build a website. To me, it was all one chunk. I would say, okay, well, I'll start building and here we go. But when you really broke it down, you had to do the prospecting, initial discovery, you had to do the sale, you had to put together the contract, you had to, take the initial deposit, you had to, do some initial wireframing with the client, you had to do initial design, you had to do design revisions, you had to meet with the client and do admin work, you had to, get those designs approved by email, you had to, actually build out the site, you had to launch the site, you had to do post-launch support training. There's all these different things that you can break it down into, and you can even break each of those items into sub-items. So the more you break it down, the more you understand how many sub-items there actually are, and the more you can effectively communicate about what you're actually trying to do. One of the things I realized too is that I was only charging for the larger bullet point. And so my clients would only realize and see the skill as the larger bullet point. I would say, yeah, okay, well, let's do some web design or web development. And I can do your development for your website for, whatever it happened to be, $2,000, $5,000, whatever. And when I really broke down all of the pieces and I explained all of those pieces and how many different people it took to work on these things to my client, I was also able to charge more because they understood the value of each piece of the service and not just the overall service. So definitely breaking it down as much as you can is really, really important. And then secondarily, second tip is just to add conditionals, right? So a lot of times people say, oh man, I don't know how to delegate because what if this happens? I can't tell them to go do this because they might have to find out if it's this way or that way, and I got to go find that out before I tell somebody to do this. Okay, well, build in that conditional to your delegation. Say, hey, if it's under $100, just buy it. If it's over $100, spend 1 hour researching and then come back to me with 3 options, and there you go. So building those conditionals into your actual delegation will help you significantly in just making sure that you're actually able to delegate things that are a little bit more complicated. So think of all those conditionals and write it all down before you hand it off to someone else. Third, choose the right person at the right level of work. So what happens to a lot of business owners, I've done this myself many times and also sort of seen this, is let's just say they're making, a decent amount in their business, they're making 100 grand or whatever. And they're like, well, if I'm asking somebody to do, a 10th of the work that I do, I should be able to hire them for 30, 40 grand, and they should be able to do just that part and that will work. Well, the reality is typically it costs a lot more to get competent work than you will actually assume, right? So either you need to break things down to such a minuscule level that they are, simple, straightforward, and can be done by, just a wider variety of people with a less specialized skill set, or you actually have to cough up and unfortunately spend a lot more money to get somebody really quality. I understand that that's really hard, especially as you're getting started with things, but the reality is, my experience is that a $100,000 person, they are not going to do double the work of a $50,000 person or be double as effective as a $50,000 person. They're oftentimes going to be 10 times more effective. So it's better to have 2 or 3 $100,000 people than a whole fleet of $50,000 people. Now, of course, you can find a diamond in the rough, right? Like you could find somebody who is just exceptionally skilled, who just hasn't risen to that next level yet. Like I've seen some people who are absolutely unimaginable. Our COO, for instance, was just managing the emergency room, wasn't making a ton, came on as an admin for us, and she's just been incredible. She's been absolutely incredible, and now she's a partner with the company, and she has a very highly specialized capability to do all sorts of stuff. Now that is just not a very normal story, and it's not a story you can count on. You might get a diamond in the rough, every few times, but you can't count on getting a diamond in the rough every single time, which is why you have to be careful to make sure that you're choosing the right person. And also make sure to give them the right level of work that, stretches them beyond their comfort zone and beyond their capabilities to the right amount. Because we work in programming, we are always assigning tasks to people that may be a little harder than their skill set or may cause them to really fight against how difficult the task is or have to learn a whole bunch of new stuff. The number in my head that has been the most helpful is I try to give people things that are 80% within their comfort zone, but 20% a stretch, right? So it's going to be 20% learning, 80% familiar. That's my personal rule, and I have found that the most successful, because if you actually give people stuff that they 100% know how to do all the time and you never stretch them, they never grow. And not only do you not like that because your employees are never growing to the next level, but they actually don't like that either. I found that employees actually want to grow and learn, and imagine that. And just like all of us, we all want to learn and grow. And the more you can kind of assume that and build that into the way that you work with employees or anybody that you're delegating to, the better. Finally, so the fourth thing, have deadlines and check-ins. This is something that I am still working on doing more effectively for sure. But, having some sort of next check-in, this should be done by, this should take this many hours, knowing what you're looking for in terms of how long a task is going to take, when they should check in with you, what format they should present that in. If you leave all that, just nebulous, people will fill it in with the laxest possible the laxest possible variation, right? Of course, you're gonna have a few good go-getters who will, just go and do it and come back to you right away. But that's not most people's personality. That's not my personality. So most people need a deadline. They need some, a check-in. They need accountability. And a lot of times, business owners hire someone else and assume that that person is going to be their accountability. They say, great, now I have, hired this person to make, a couple videos a week. I'm so glad that I don't have to think about making a couple videos in a week anymore. Well, no, that person, unless you're specifically hiring a project manager or somebody who has kind of that type of personality entirely, you are going to have to, check in. You're going to have to, you're going to have to have some accountability for that person and give them a structure so that they, know when they're supposed to get their stuff done. I have found that giving them an estimated number of hours for stuff, right? Like, hey, spend 2 hours on this, try to get it done in that time, and then report back to me. That can be really helpful. Hey, I need this by Wednesday at our meeting. That's a good way to go. So yeah, definitely having deadlines and checking in. So anyway, yeah, so one final thing I will say. You will not receive any of the benefits of delegating right away. So when you first start delegating, what you will realize is that, doing the work yourself always has some level of reward to it, right? Because you're like, okay, I can just, grab some coffee, I can put on my headphones, and I can kind of work on powering through it. And that can feel really good because you can kind of see the progress bar. You can say, ooh, sweet, I did 20% of this. Oh, sweet, I did, 55% of this. Oh, I'm almost done. I got this one part left. You get all these little dopamine hits along the way. And when you delegate, you don't actually get those. And so even though it's really important to delegate and so much of your time can be saved by delegating, you don't get the same kind of rewards as if you did the work yourself. But the reality is you can actually go way further, way faster. If you think about it, oftentimes you'll think, man, it's going to take me a whole half hour to write down all these steps so that somebody can do this. I could just do it in an hour myself. Why would I only save 30 minutes on it? I could just get it done and I could know I'll get that dopamine hit. The problem is it limits your influence, right? So let's just say you can do, every task takes an hour. You've got 8 hours in your day. You might work more than that, but you've got 8 hours in your day. And so you can do 8 tasks, right? Now, what if you start delegating? And it takes you a half hour to write down what to do for each of those tasks and to check back on them and all that sort of thing. It takes you a half hour on average. Well, now all of a sudden you have influence over 16 tasks a day, right? And business is all about speed. So the faster you can get things to move, the faster you're going to be able to power through and, the more influence your organization is going to have. You may say, oh, that's not very good if I only save, 50% of my time versus just doing the task myself. Well, that may not be true, because if your business goes twice as fast because you are delegating a little bit more and you are working on stuff a little bit less, man, that's a game changer. If your business goes double as fast or, you get twice as much done, that's a complete game changer. And I think, one of the final things I'll say about identity is we have this tendency to look at delegating and planning and all that as not real work, right? And that's why when people are like, oh, well, I don't like delegating, I don't like, handing it off to someone else, that's because you're kind of perceiving it as not the real work. Whereas, programming or, building something yourself or, actually getting out there with a, hammer and nails, that's like the real work. But the reality is both of those are work, right? And oftentimes delegating and planning is a form of work that we undervalue and we underappreciate. And so learning to appreciate it more, learning to make it part of your identity is something that's going to help you so much, because it's going to help you level up significantly. I mean, imagine being able to do double the work And half the time, imagine being able to have influence over so many other things and reach your goals faster because you are able to use other people to get where you want to go. But the last thing I will say is that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with other people. It is so rewarding to build a culture and to work with other people. Learning to work with other people is messy because they will absolutely mess things up. They will absolutely, not do things the way that you would do it. But sometimes you'll learn something from the way that someone else does something that's different than you. Sometimes you'll learn something from having a culture of people around you who are able to help you see your blind spots. And so ultimately, learning to work with other people is a really, really, really valuable life skill that will help you supercharge what you're doing and also help you avoid a lot of pitfalls. Delegating is sort of just a way of sort of working within human systems, right? Of working with everyone around us and learning to influence, not micromanage, but just influence the people around us, and that can get great results. So let me know if you have any particular frustrations about delegating, and appreciate it.